I had made her pay for her ice cream.
Is there Haagen-Dazs on the horizon? Like a buy one, get one free, something like that?
Went in there and you've got like CrossFit champion, professional bodybuilder, handsome billionaire astronaut. And my DMs were dusty instead of flies.
Tumbleweed.
We went out for an ice cream, my ex-fiancée and I.
Does that sound weird to say that?
Yeah, it does, yeah. I think anyone doing a show like that would be lying if they said that was their sole reason. I don't know where I pointed at you then. I presumed you were single.
No.
But okay.
I like
lady.
how you looked at me
So-
and presumed I was single.
Does your phone just like blow up on Instagram, people going, "You're a dickhead"?
Yeah. Even more so than normal. I just take my first one, that's fine. I'm not picky. It said her name in her bio, so I went on Facebook, found her name, found her mum, sent her mum a DM. Everyone was expecting it to be a bunch of like permatan chavs with turkey teeth. What you see on that episode is not the reality of what happened.
Hello and welcome to the Behind the Screens podcast, a unique look at the people behind the media you consume with me, Curtis.
And me, James.
And today we are joined by Tom Stroud, 39-year-old PR and advertising consultant, star of Love is Blind UK Season 1. Tom, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Buzzing to have you on.
Pleasure.
First guest in the new space.
Whoop, whoop.
We're here. We need to do our inaugural Polaroid. We've got the Polaroid wall.
Can you get it on? Oh, you dropped it.
Oh no, that's not a good sign, is it?
There we go. Get right in the middle. I'm going to push that over. There we go. Boom, you're on the board.
You better leave me in the middle for the rest of the roads, guys.
I think at least for 2 or 3 episodes.
Well, thank you so
then we'll
much.
see. No, genuinely, really good to have you on. We want to talk about everything, really. I think there's a lot of different angles to you and your life. So, shall we start with young Tom?
You want to take it right back to the early,
Yeah.
the formative, traumatic years.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the best stuff. That's the juiciest.
Yeah, no problems. I mean, I can definitely give you a run up into sort of what led me into this world because we both work in the similar worlds, right? But yeah. So I mean, I grew up raised by a single mum with my little brother. In sort of quite humble circumstances, I guess. You know, I was raised by a mum who was on benefits for most of my childhood. And I was always very, very academic, but really sort of struggled a little bit with direction when I was a kid. I think it's really interesting, like education system. I'm not going to ramble on about it, but how I think kids are probably expected to know exactly the direction they want to take their life in when they're sort of 14, 15, 16, right? Because the GCSEs that you take inform your A-levels and that informs your degree. And I didn't have a clue. So, I mean, I dropped out of college when I was 16 because... I sort of struggled a lot as a kid and struggled with my own direction. But and then ended up going to uni a couple of years later than everyone else when I sort of finally got my shit together and studied marketing. And then from there, still didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. In those days, there was no such thing as social media. So I just thought, out of all of the marketing disciplines, what can I do which is the most exciting, the most creative? I saw a video movie called Phone Booth with Colin Farrell in it where he plays this like real high achieving dude, and he was dating Katie Holmes in the movie, so I thought that sounds awesome. So I'll go into PR and did a year in industry as a sandwich year, and then got my first gig at an agency called Bray Leno up in Bristol, big networked agency, about 15 years ago. So, and the rest is history.
Love it. I love how you've now ended up in a position where you've got, the career and then you've got this social media side of things. It's rare that you can meld the two together. Usually you give one up.
Yeah.
Must be interesting kind of using the information from each side.
It has been. I mean, social media is, I'm lucky enough or unlucky enough to call it a relatively new thing, right? Because, I remember when social first came out, and it's become part of the armory of any sort of decent comms person, and more often than not, kind of the primary channel, really. But you're absolutely right. Like my experience has always been advising brands, predominantly big consumer brands, on social, and so to sit on the other side of the fence, so to speak, and to be the actual kind of creator, I guess. I'm not,
talent influencer.
Yeah, exactly. Has been, you never stop learning, and for me, it's been amazing seeing how it works from a creator point of view, and gives you a much better understanding of the algorithms, of hooks, of quality of content, all that kind of stuff.
We need to
So-
be listening to this because we need to remember this.
It's all right. It's all recorded. We'll be fine.
But no, it has been, and I could reel off a bunch of different learners, and I'm looking forward to throwing this stuff around with you guys. So.
Yeah.
What was like your first social media platform back in the day?
Oh my God, probably MySpace.
Cave paintings, wasn't it, back then?
Yeah. Do you know what?
I'm a similar age.
Exactly.
Would you classify MSN Messenger as a social media platform?
Oh, I remember that. After school, straight on it.
Nudges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably that was
Pretending you were offline and then you actually were online.
Exactly.
To get a girl's attention.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's
Log him up
right. And then you're having a really good chat, and then your mum wants to use the house phone, and you know, I've got to go. So
Interesting.
Brilliant. So you talk about the learnings. I always find it so fascinating, especially you're working as a consultant now, that so many consultants and people in that space haven't even done it, like posted content, or spent time learning it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like now when you're in a conversation, pitching to someone for their work, is it useful? Do you mention that you're in the space, or is it a bit awkward, like bringing it up?
Yeah, great question. That my heartland's always been PR, right? So people have different interpretations of what PR is, but for me, it's anything which sits in earned or shared media. That's the way that I always used to describe it. PR has a really bad reputation. PR needs a bit of a PR campaign against it. But to answer your question, it has been really, really useful when I've been pitching for new business because, I've done a lot of social media strategy work in my career, and I wrote social media strategy for McDonald's a few years ago. And I think sometimes, and agencies are going to hate me for this, you might hate me for this, guys, you put so much work into the strategy, you almost lose sight of what's effective. And I think strategy needs to be really, really simple. And when I've been playing around with content, it's actually just thinking very, very clearly about what are my pillars, and within those pillars, what kind of content is going to resonate with my audience. And obviously any good social media strategy needs to lean off a broader brand strategy, right? But I think sometimes brands can get so obsessed with overcomplicating strategy that they lose sight of actually what's important for their end consumers, right? The audience on those platforms.
And before we get onto the show, your social media before the show,
Yeah.
were you posting content? Were you active? Were you doing anything, or were you just posting a few things with mates? And
you guys would call me a nano influencer, I think. So I had 1,700 followers, highly engaged audience, very niche, mainly like my grandma. So I've always been active on it, but it's never been with a view to serving my audience. It's about serving me, right? And that's the switch that you need to think about in your head. If you're looking to build an audience, of course that audience wants to know about you if you're in the public eye at all, but you also need to think about what's going to engage them. I'll give you a really good example, right? One of the lads from the show is a personal trainer, and he posts personal training content, but he's not considering his audience there because his audience is 95% female. So he's just seen this drop off on his engagement because they don't care about that. And initially, when they see a video of him with his top off doing CrossFit workouts, they're like, awesome. But that quickly dies down. Yeah. And what I've noticed with mine is I think about my audience first and think about, well, what can I give them which they're going to find interesting and insightful? And go, what are they going to, deeply engage with, not just but share, send, or comment on. So.
And do you feel like you have to be posting now?
Yeah, this is one of the bad byproducts of it. You're so much more aware of it. And I've never been one to advise brands on posting frequency. I still believe that quality usurps quantity any day, but you are aware of it. That my biggest insight with that stuff is when you build an engaged audience, people start to expect to see stuff from you. And if you're not posting for a while, then that expectation drops off. That you need to make sure that you constantly engage in them, because I think when you've got a big bit of content, or when you want to start building a relationship or a trend or a dynamic or something that you want to talk to them about, you need to constantly engage them, because otherwise they end up dropping off.
And has there been, sorry mate,
No, you go.
has there been piece of content that you've posted and think, oh, they're going to love that, and then actually nobody cares?
Absolutely. This is the joy and the frustration with social media in one nutshell is exactly that. It's you can spend ages creating really, really polished content which looks incredible, and you get no engagement on it. And my two biggest, most engaged videos, one was shot by my 17-year-old neighbour in our local playground, just as because she just likes mucking around with it. Yeah, it was a bit of a red flag, that one. And I wouldn't advise any brand to do that. But that one did 7.5 million views. And then I post, kind of more polished stuff, whether I'm working with brands, whether I've shot it myself, and it'll just get nothing at all. And that's the beautiful thing about social media. It's just completely democratized. Like anyone can do it. And that's amazing. And I think certainly for brands, like brands they get too obsessed with, you know, their own brand values, mission statements, you know, what Pantones are we using, all that kind of stuff. And I just think, like, actually just think about your fucking audience, you know?
Absolutely. I think the social media side of things is always really interesting. We had a girl called Anime Roby who was in Love Island a few years ago. We had her on the show before. And it was interesting to see, obviously, the conversation you have is, did you go on there for followers?
Yeah.
You can answer that if you want. It's up to you.
I was going to ask it later on.
Yeah, okay. well, let's cover that when we talk about the show. But what I found was really interesting is Love Island changed their approach. And you used to be able to build your socials whilst you were in. You could have people managing it. They've cut that out. And I think that's probably encouraged the decline of the show.
So people can't post on it, or families can't post
they're blocked from posting anything the whole time. I don't understand why you would put that in. But for you, did you have a plan? Did you have anyone working on your channels? Obviously, it's different because it's not live. But were you creating content, you know, reactive to what was going on?
No, was the answer. And there are very distinct differences between a show like Love Island and a show like Love is Blind, right? Like Love Island cast members are inherently marketable, and you can immediately understand the verticals which they're going to attract. So
Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing.
Exactly. You know, fast fashion predominantly, jewelry, hair, makeup, all that kind of stuff. Whereas for a show like Love is Blind, obviously it skews a bit older, but also there's a huge difference between genders. And this is one thing that people don't understand for reality, is that like the girls on a show like Love is Blind can immediately go into fashion, hair, beauty, but for men it's a little bit more difficult, and that's because predominantly because the audience we attract is female. So like 90% of my audience is women. So even if I was to get, it'd probably been Marks and Spencer's or a Giacomo deal, it's not relevant. It's not relevant to my audience. So I think for guys in particular, like if you're going on a show like that to get brand deals, it's not going to happen, you know. And I never had a strategy going into it at all. You're absolutely right, Curtis, that because it's a pre-shot show, you have loads of time to prepare and think about it, but you don't know what the narrative of the show is going to be. You don't know what your storyline is going to be. So my view was like, there's no point even thinking about it until the show's come out. So,
and because we're talking about the show, how did it all come about? What was the lead up to you being on it? How did they approach you?
Yeah.
And what was the reasoning for going, do you know what, I'm going to give that a go?
So I've worked in, you know, stressful agency world for 12, 13 years, you know, got up to director, loved my job, but it was stressful. And what I found was that, firstly, it didn't allow me much time for dating. And then second, it didn't really allow me much time for anything else. You know, you become your job, and it's an inevitable byproduct of working in this industry, right? And I love this industry, but I had a moment a couple of years ago where both my parents got sick, quite unwell at pretty much exactly the same time. So it forced me to change my lifestyle a little bit, mainly because I needed to be around for them. And so that was the catalyst for me to go into consultancy, you know, and help agencies that need senior level support, things like pitches, strategy work, advice on proposition, staffing, all that kind of stuff, and then direct to brand stuff as well. It was something I was forced into. It wasn't a lifestyle choice, and it's kind of a bit scary at times. But so that happened. My parents then started to get better, thankfully. And then, as if by magic, got a call from the casting producers on this show, like sort of 6, 7 months before it went out, or before we shot it, rather. So I was like, right, it's like a sign, because I finally have more flexibility and freedom in my life. There's no way in hell that any PR agency is going to let someone take 2 months off work to go on a show like that. So I was like, you know, I'm sad, lonely, single. I've got to go for it. So I said yes.
So was it like an Instagram DM or? Yeah,
they slide into your DMs.
Yeah.
For the guys, they do. For the girls, I think the format of the show means, you know, I think girls potentially buy into the concept of falling in love with someone emotionally before you've met them, maybe a bit better than guys do. So, yeah, most of the guys, a few applied. Amazingly, Freddie, like the heartthrob of the show, applied. But yeah, it was a DM process, quite a stringent casting process, you know. And I was actually away in Bali for a quite a bit of that, so I missed quite a bit of it. But when I got back, they were sort of said, "Can we meet you for a coffee?" And they offered it to me.
So what does that look like then? So you get your DM, you know, or was it DM first?
Yeah.
What happens next?
DM.
Well, what did you think when you saw that? You were just like, okay,
Oh.
I'll give that a go. Or do you think it was a wind up?
I mean, my DMs were dusty instead of flies.
Tumbleweed.
Exactly.
What's this? Replying straight away. Yes, I'm in.
Exactly. But it was an initial Zoom call, and then a series of Zoom calls, psychological testing, and then I think a lot of the cast had a actual day in studio, screen testing and that sort of stuff. And like I said, I missed a bit of that because I was away. But they put a lot of rigor into it, and I suppose they have to, because there's a moral obligation to making sure that they're not casting a bunch of weirdos. So,
and then for people that haven't watched the show, what's the whole concept around it? Mainly for my
For James. For James's benefit.
Because there's going to be other people that listen to this that haven't watched it as well.
No, absolutely fair. So the concept of the show is, can you fall in love with someone sight unseen? So without meeting them. So you go into the first phase of the show, you go into these pod dates, which are shot in Sweden, whereby you're dating 15 women, and you're in this small room with a sofa in it. It's kind of like a therapy room, and you can't see them. You can only hear their voice. So
I did see a clip of you saying you're wearing Birkenstocks or something.
Yeah, they still haven't reached out for a brand deal, which I'm very disappointed in. But and that's the concept. And as these days go on, you date fewer people, but you have longer dates until eventually you're sort of dating people for a few hours at a time. And very quickly, within a couple of weeks, you have to decide whether to propose or not.
So at first you're dating, 16 was it?
15
women. Do you both go, okay, I don't like him, he's off? Or does it have to be like matched up like that for you to get through to the next date?
Yes, good question. So within these dates, you take a journal in, right? And you have to take notes, which is kind of a bit fucking rude on a date. Imagine if you're in a bar being like, so what's your favourite colour? But the reason why you're taking notes is because you have to try and remember everything. And when you're dating 15 people in one day, it's very, very difficult. But at the end of every day, you then, and it's the only time in life when it's appropriate to rank people, but you then have to rank the people in terms of preference. And then you hand in your journals, and they then go into a big algorithm, and you hope that the next day you're going to see the people that you ranked highly. And I was very fortunate with mine, that all of my sort of top 8 the next day I saw, and then it slowly shrinks it down. So
yeah. At the start of it, you're like, I'm buzzing through this. It's really fun. Then by the 15th, it's like, oh God, just like this.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, because, like, I don't know, depends what kind of personality. I'm an extrovert, so I like get energy from people. But a lot of people in there were like, I am
dating
knackered.
fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, I just take my first one. That's fine. I'm not picky.
So day one on set, like what does that look like? You've all like in there.
Yeah,
what's
you're
that
sizing
day?
each other up.
Yeah, okay, so this is really interesting. The dynamic between the boys, that was the thing which was the hardest thing for me. I found the dating really enjoyable, but when was the last time you were put in an environment with 14 other lads, some real alpha guys in there? If I'm honest with you, and this is going to make me sound a bit arrogant, but when I got cast, I was like, yeah, I'm not a bad-looking guy. I've got a bit of chat. I'm going to do quite well. I sort of saw the American one, and I was like, I think I'd do all right against these American guys. Went in there, and you've got like CrossFit champion, professional bodybuilder, like handsome billionaire astronaut. Do you know what I mean? I was like, it was wild, and like your childhood insecurities get raised, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to compete with these guys, right? These sort of big alpha guys. One of the shortest guys in there, like. But the concept of the show isn't about what you look like,
Exactly.
and that was the most refreshing thing. The reason I think why their format works, because it wasn't the best looking alpha dudes that succeeded. It was the guys that knew themselves and what they could bring to a relationship.
Interesting.
I want to go back to the kind of the process of getting you in. When that DM came in, did you know straight away, like I said, yes, I need to go in, or
No,
did it take some time?
I needed a lot of convincing by the casting production team. Mainly because it wasn't something which I'd ever thought about before, and obviously in my job, like, I work with reality people, and it's not all like all that glitters isn't always gold, right? So I was aware of quite a lot of the risks, and working in the job that I do, I mean, I was worried that I'd get a bad edit or behave badly, and that would then have an impact on my career. And this is a career I've spent 15 years cultivating, So I was on the fence for a long time with it. But
And what was your goal going into the show? Did you genuinely think you'd be able to find somebody?
It's a good question. Like, I bought into the format. I'd been dating in the London dating scene for sort of 5-6 years with no success. You know, on this constant repeat of sort of dating people for a month, 2 months, and then it not working out. And I was kind of sick and tired of that. And I'd actually taken a bit of a break from dating. And then I was finally ready to get back into it. And that's when the show came. So there was a little bit of fate involved, I think. But I think anyone doing a show like that would be lying if they said that was their sole reason. Like, I was also interested in everything about it, you know?
Yeah.
And finding someone was and still is very, very important to me, but you're also intrigued, right? Like, it's what a thing to be part of.
Yeah.
And I felt very, very fortunate and blessed when I got cast for it. But yeah, knowing what I know now, I often get asked if I'd do it again, and I don't know. I really don't know, because it's real ups and downs with that stuff. It's a bit of a poison chalice.
Do you get paid to go on it?
You get your expenses covered, so they give you a flat amount, which is basically enough to cover your mortgage, and you are not spending a penny when you're part of it, obviously. So and you're living a really good life for a couple of months. But.
Interesting.
Do you get to just kind of pick, you know, what you're having for dinner? Is it flash the cash or?
Yeah, I mean, this is good.
When
good
you're out of the
BTS
pods,
stuff. when you're shooting the pods, it's all like externally catered. The food is rough. We had like a hot dog curry one night. Like
Wow.
it was grim.
Back to being a student.
Yeah, exactly. It really was like that. But I mean, when you're in Greece shooting the retreat stuff, like, it's just incredible. And then when you're living with each other, you get like a per diem payment. So you just get, I think it's like 40 quid a day each, just to buy food and go to nice places and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a really good life.
And do you get to see anything before it goes live on Netflix?
We see it at the same time you guys see it. So you get a briefing from a producer a couple of days before. It's a verbal briefing, and they tell you in the phone. But obviously, they're not going to be like, the whole country's going to hate you for not paying for that ice cream. So so you're never really prepared for it. And
What was your briefing like then? So can you remember what the conversation?
Like I say, I mean, they would never tell you the full extent. I suppose they don't know how the audience is going to react to it, though, right? Like, so they'll tell you factually what's in that episode. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't in any way prepared for the size of the show and the impact that it would have on people around the world. You know, it took me massively by surprise.
And let's say when that moment you mentioned there, the ice cream one, when you saw that, what was your initial feeling?
Do you know what? Like, I'm a PR person. I've worked in this industry for ages, so I would assume that I'm pretty good at understanding how an audience is going to react. But with a few of my moments, I saw them and thought, that'll be fine. You know, it's not quite what happened, or maybe they misinterpreted that a little bit. But it's my biggest learning from the show is how bought in an audience gets to it. You know, it's like, if anything happens which contradicts or challenges somebody's values, like, they get incredibly agitated and wound up about it. It's crazy. That's the thing. And my storyline in particular, we had one of the biggest, most polarizing sort of narratives in the whole series, which was about financial contribution in relationships, right? And I had so many women and men being like, that's amazing, and I'm so it's brilliant that you now understand what your values are and what you're looking for. But then I had another huge portion of the internet, particularly people who maybe have taken a slightly more traditional approach to relationships, that really, really saw it as like insulting. And so that's what I mean about it being a bit of a poison chalice.
Yeah, want us to cover that in a lot more depth in a minute, but I think let's go back then to the ice cream moment.
Yeah.
For the sake of the audience and those that haven't seen, can you firstly run us through kind of how you saw that event and what happened, and then secondly, if different, how it was portrayed on the show?
Do you know what would have been great for this?
What?
Is if we could have a
Some
screen
magnums.
there and then go, let's just watch that.
Yeah.
See what your feedback
Let's add
was.
that to the basket. For
Next episode.
So the ice cream thing, and I just want to make sure I get this 100% right, because I don't want to bias it towards my point of view at all. We went out for an ice cream, my ex-fiancée and I, and
Does that sound weird to say that?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny. And she was ahead of me in the queue. It was in Covent Garden, just down the road, and went to pay for ice cream and couldn't find her card. So she went, I've forgotten my card, do you mind getting this? And so I said, yeah, sure.
Liar.
And then I went to pay for my ice cream. I was a bit behind her in the queue, and she said, oh, I've found my card. Do you want me to get this? And I said, sure. And do you know what? I didn't even think about it, right? Because in my world, it was just an ice cream. But to her, and this is where I have to be absolutely conscious of her point of view, she was like, it was kind of like a date. It was like one of the first times we'd been out together, and I had made her pay for her ice cream. So that was the reason why she got upset about it, right? And if I'm reflecting on that myself, I probably should have been a bit more conscious about that. But in my brain, I'm like, it's just an ice cream. Like, it doesn't really matter, you know? But yeah, so that was an interesting one to reflect on.
So in terms of then the fallout, talk us through, I mean, you've probably seen all the detail better than anyone that can research it, because it will be in your feed, it will be everywhere. Talk us through, like, what was the sentiment? How was it positioned?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's such an interesting topic because, like I say, this storyline, so our storyline, just for those of you that haven't seen it, was all about financial contributions in relationships. And the thing about a show like that is they have to make these viewpoints very simple and easy for the viewer to understand, right? So the way that it was framed, the way that I've been referencing the internet was like, I'm the 50-50 guy, and Maria, my fiancée, wants a provider, so someone who takes care of everything, particularly in the first few months of courting. Of course, the truth is a lot more nuanced than that, but for argument's sake, you know, that's kind of really where our two viewpoints landed. And the problem is, like, well, it's not a problem, like, it creates so much conversation because there is a certain type of woman, for example, who firmly believes in financial equality and believes that is a big contributor towards feminism and equality more broadly between men and women. And that's the way that I was brought up, right? So I was brought up by a single mum, and you have to understand that the environments you're brought up in inform your views to a certain perspective. Whereas Maria was brought up in a much more traditional environment. So, yeah, and this is the thing, right? So people get incredibly confronted when a viewpoint on social media on a big platform like Netflix conflicts with their own. And that's why I think it was so controversial, because this is an issue which everybody has experienced at one point or another, whether you're, I don't know where I pointed at you then. I presumed you were single.
No.
But okay, yeah,
I like how you looked at me and presumed I was single just on the item.
I knew it was taken. So, but it's, you know, finances and relationships is something which, if you're married, you have to communicate about thoroughly. You know, when you're dating, and I think it's actually a big anxiety point for a lot of people when they're going on a date. It's like, who's going to pick up the bill, you know? And I think there's a lot of work to be done to communicate this stuff a lot more openly and to make it less stigmatized, you know?
I want to just
How many are you getting the bills at the moment on your dates?
Great question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, there's less kind of dates now. It's more just kind of life, isn't it? But, you know, I'd say it's a little bit more proportional, but it's just kind of, you know, whoever's at the bar will tap the card, you know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, just avoid the argument and I pay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I guess there's two approaches to it, isn't it? It depends what side you sit on.
To be fair, she does pay sometimes, just in case she listens.
Do you think kind of that moment was exaggerated? Do you think it was just kind of a case of she's there, she's just tapped it? Or do you think it was you were trying to show a value or something in the moment?
No, for me, I didn't even notice it when it happened, because it wasn't about values. It was just simply a case of
ice cream.
It's just an ice cream, you know? But like, clearly, and this is a great thing about going on a show like that, it forces you to rethink, you know, other people's points of view, I guess. And there were loads of learning experiences for me like that in terms of my own values and in terms of how other people might perceive my values.
In terms of the production and that side of things, you mentioned then about, you know, this was your storyline, this is what they focused on. Following that moment, were the producers, you know, constantly asking you and trying to push things to make it more apparent?
Yeah, this is the crazy thing about being part of a big show like that. They know your storyline before you even know your storyline. Do you know what I mean? Like they are preempting the stuff that's
quite
going to happen.
Impressive, really.
It's amazing, and you need to give them so much kudos for that stuff. But this is the one thing. So every single part of your relationship happens organically, but the one thing they will do is when they know what your narrative is going to be, they'll prod you and prod you and prod you until eventually they get the line that they want. And you don't even realise it's the line at that point. You're just having a great time and you're probably 10 margaritas deep and crying about your trauma. But so that's interesting. And there are a couple of bits. I mean, my biggest bugbear with the whole show was the wedding day. Because, for those that haven't seen it, the way that it's shot and portrayed is that I jilted my ex-fiancée at the altar.
This is a good. This is a time for Molly's question.
So, is it really?
Yeah.
So,
right. Okay. Molly's question.
How could he give Maria's mum his word that he would protect her on the morning of the wedding and then leave her at the altar? Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark!
So it's a completely fair question, and sadly, what you see on that episode is not the reality of what happened. The reality is that we both knew it was going to be a no about a week prior. And we'd even been given the option by the producers to cut it off, to go and sort of film some stuff with our families where we explain the reason why it's a no. But for whatever reason, Maria was quite keen to go through with the wedding day and sort of see it through to the end, which I could understand her point of view on. But all of her family knew that it was going to be a no. So, and what I always tell people when they ask me that is like, think about that conversation I had with her mum in the context of her already knowing it was a no.
Yeah.
And then me saying, I'm going to do my best to protect your daughter is basically me saying that whatever happens at the altar and whatever I say, it's going to be done in as a respectful way as possible. And the other thing I'll say is you don't know which of you they're going to ask first what your answer is. Right. So if they'd have asked Maria, she would have had a no as well, and the whole narrative would have flipped round. But which is really interesting because if you look at some of the other couples, like they don't always ask the boy. Demi and Ollie had Demi go first. So that's what I'd always tell people. Like, and that's my biggest bugbear. And even Maria was quite upset at the reunion because I'd said some stuff about wanting to raise a boy and not have him expect to pay for everything, and wanting to raise a girl and that girl to be strong and independent and not expect a man to provide. Right, but the thing that people need to realize is that is 2 minutes of about 3 hours of stuff, me doing stuff to camera in different locations, which they've picked and used in the edit to suit the narrative. So that was the hardest bit for me, I think, was I had like basically every single Middle Eastern wife after me at that moment for jilting a wonderful Muslim Moroccan woman at the altar. And that was really quite difficult to deal with at times because you want to go back and set the record straight, but you can't. Like it's just impossible. So.
And all these like pivotal moments in the show, like that, the jilting the altar, the ice cream. Yeah. When you're watching it, does your phone just like blow up on Instagram? People going, "You're a dickhead."
Yeah. Even more so than normal. So I normally only get that in the WhatsApp groups. But, no, it does, and that's the thing. Like because there are so many super fans, like they've often watched it before you've even watched it, right? And like the episodes come out in weekly bursts, and certain weeks you have 4 episodes come out, and like you get a feeling for what the narrative and the sentiment of the audience is going to be before you've even seen the show. So, which is interesting.
And you like looking at your phone going, "Oh God, what's happened?"
Exactly.
And I guess is it like just a roller coaster of emotion, thinking, "Oh, something nice has happened," then "Oh, something bad's happened." Yeah. How did you deal with that?
Like my advice to anyone if they're going to go on a show like that is like be super prepared for it, because I was underprepared for the negativity on certain episode releases. But I mean, I ended up, you lose sight of who you are a little bit because you're all you're doing is just scrolling social. There's so much happening. There's media articles coming out. Every social channel is blowing up. You get all these TikTok creators that are making these fucking harsh videos to get to the top of the algorithm. And the thing that sold it for me and got out of, I was in a pretty low place at one point, and I just went home. Went to stay with my mum and stepdad for 4 days, spent 4 days just walking, not looking at my phone. And then you're like, right, I'm strong and now again. I've got my grounding and understand who I am. And the most important thing is like, it doesn't matter what some TikToker on the other side of the world saying about you. It matters about what your friends and family think of you.
Is there any in particular comment that like stands out and really got to you? It was like I'm done.
Well, the thing is, any comment which would get to me would be one where I see an element of truth in, right? Because then you're like, that's a development thing. So like there's a lot of wording around like stingy, dusty, but I was kind of like, it doesn't really matter. I found it quite funny in a way. But I mean, I said this morning when I was chatting to someone else, like the sentiment on my channels now is 99% positive, and it's because I think people have
blocked them all.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a block list of thousands. But people also have a much better sense of who I am now. It's one of the beautiful things about social media. You can make content which, you know, reflects you as a person. But occasionally I'll still get the most, like, I got a pretty savage troll yesterday. I did a post which blew up a little bit. And when stuff blows up, it takes it well outside of your community and even the communities that they operate in.
Yeah.
And I had a 22-year-old from Ecuador be like super harsh, not about show stuff, just about general trolling. And I sort of went back with this very passive-aggressive response, which I do occasionally, which is like, look, no matter what's happened to you, no matter who's hurt you, I promise you, if you put more positivity out in the world, you'll get more positivity back. And then she came back with another sort of unrelated trolling thing. And I was like, this was last night. I was like, fuck this. And it said her name in her bio. So I went on Facebook, found her name, found her mum, sent her mum a DM.
That's amazing.
Because she was only 22. I was like, there's loads of photos of her and her mum. So I was like, right.
Did the mum come back?
Mum hasn't come back yet, but if she does, there is a strong Instagram reel coming out if their mum comes back. So
that's so funny.
That's great though, because whilst you were saying that, I was thinking, you know, from a brand's perspective, it's usually kind of rule number one that, you know, if there's heat, unless you're going to release a statement, you know, you ignore it, you don't respond to it, because all you're doing is directing and, you know, adding fire to the flame.
I saw some funny one the other day. I was watching a YouTube video. It's a guy who runs a business, and he was running Facebook ads, and somebody commented on the Facebook ads saying, "This guy's a dickhead," or something like that, or he's like he's a scam artist. And apparently, like, he went on his Facebook profile. You know how you can call people?
He
called him up and he says, "Hello, Brian. It's whatever his name was. Why am I a dickhead?" And the guy went, "What?"
I love it.
Put the phone down again. Then he called him back and they had like a 10-minute conversation about like why he's a dickhead, and then he convinced him he wasn't a dickhead. He goes,
right.
"Oh, you're actually an all right guy." So it's just like mental.
It is crazy. I seen, you know, James Smith, the PT, and he's doing really well, and he did something where he went to meet one of the trolls without the troll knowing, and he was like, "Hi, James," and the troll was like, "Oh my God, I'm your biggest fan ever," and he was like, "But you called me a dickhead last night on my social media." So, and that's the thing. I mean, it's honestly, I could talk for hours just about trolling, but like normally it is about them. It's them holding a mirror up to themselves and their own dissatisfaction with their own lives, and, you know, just wanting to have a platform to vent and express themselves. And so I can understand it. I just can't justify it.
Makes me think, do you have a burner account at all that you ever, you know, comment anonymously? Or
oh, what, like, "Oh, Tom, you look really hot in this photo"?
Well, yeah, not necessarily for your account, but maybe if you wanted to, you know, comment on someone else's. Have you ever left a troll comment or anything like that?
No, and the reason for that is because, I mean, I know we're going to come on to like purpose and all that stuff, but like, I believe that anyone, regardless of how angry or aggressive they are, like, deserves to be treated with consideration and kindness. And so if I was ever to respond, even if it's from myself, it would be a very, very balanced, I'd hope, articulate response. But the problem is when people receive a response like that and just completely disregard it, and then I'm like, "You're a fucking idiot." But
that's how they get you.
Yeah.
They just remove any logic from the response.
Exactly. So, you know, but, you know, I don't want to say you've got to feel sorry for them, but there's an element of understanding that you need to apply to any relationship, right? And social media is no different.
It's very convincing that you don't have a secondary account. So
Have you got one?
No, but it's something that every
You're gonna
time
get one.
we've asked it. Yeah, I'm really tempted.
Are you going to troll this podcast?
Just
Right.
James
James is a dick.
What's that haircut?
It's a bit harsh. That's live trolling.
Yeah, I don't need to be anonymous.
And then on your Instagram bio, it says modern masculinity. What does that mean for you?
What a big question that is. So I'm going to try and give you a succinct answer here, but the whole rationale and reason why I've started putting out content around in these areas is because when the show Reunion came out, I was asked on that particular part of the show whether I felt that I had feminine qualities, and it was almost framed as a bit of a negative question, right? And my view was like, absolutely. They're the things that I'm most proud of as a human being, like the fact that I have empathy and compassion and kindness. And I found it really surprising that was viewed, a man having feminine qualities was viewed as a negative. We then did a press junket a few days later, and I got asked this question by this amazing life coach called Michelle Ellman, and we discussed it at length, and she clipped it up and put it on her own social media, and it just blew up. And from that point, I had loads of women in particular asking me questions about this and sort of like trying to apply that to the men in their lives. And I thought, well, without even realizing, like, I think my view of masculinity is very, very different to a lot of men. And a lot of men really, really struggle to understand themselves and don't understand that their views and their values come from the building blocks in their lives, their childhoods, their teenage years, which actually they've never really been able to interrogate that. They've never been able to interrogate what they stand for themselves, and their view of masculinity is their, probably very traditional father telling them that men like power drills and cars and birds and pints. And I'm being very simplistic there.
Do you know my dad?
What? Exactly. Oh God, I'm not going down that road. But yeah, and this was the thing. And it's like, right, so I've done loads of work on myself and loads of therapy and loads of reading. And that's because I felt that I've had to, because I've had certain behaviors which haven't been particularly positive, which have been maybe quite toxic at times, and realised fairly early on in my life that the only way to change that behaviour is by understanding yourselves and your own building blocks, as I call them, better. Yeah. And so whilst I'm not a perfect human being, I am very much aware of my flaws, and I'm aware of when I have certain reactions to things, I'm aware of why I have those reactions. So, and this is the thing. And as I started putting out more content around this stuff, I put out a bit of content around love bombing the other day because I have been a love bomber, and I've gone on super hard in the early stages of relationships because I felt I needed that validation from the other person. Yep. And then the minute I have to show some vulnerability and some stuff about myself that I don't like, I've just walked away. And that's what love bombing is, right? So men don't understand that shit. Like, they just think it's normal, and it's not. It's not normal, and it's very damaging. So, and this is the thing. And so to your point around planning social content, right, one moment as part of the publicity for the show has then led me into this whole world, and I'm currently studying a life coaching qualification, and I'm launching a podcast called Why Do Men, which is all about these toxic male behaviors and dating relationships, and doing consultancy work with a dating app at the moment, and speaking on panel events and all that stuff. And that's the thing, man. Like, I've just ridden the wave, and it's not ever gonna be my day job because it doesn't pay as well as my career does, but it's stuff that I'm passionate about, and it gives me so much purpose, and it feels really good to be able to, in a small way, like, help other people understand themselves. So.
That's great. And it's something you're passionate about. Like, as the old adage goes, do something you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
So you may be doing it on the side, but that's great. I did want to go back to your point around kind of working on yourself and trying to find, what these building blocks were.
Yeah.
Have you done more work since going in the show, or would you have said that you were happy with where you'd got to?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I took a break from therapy post-show. I felt like the show really, really was really helpful in terms of narrowing exactly what I was looking for in a relationship. And whilst I didn't find love in the show, like, it helped me really drill down into that. So that was... Are you trying on with me?
See for any female viewers.
It's like the lighting. It's doing something in the studio.
It's like we're in Amsterdam. So before the show, I thought that what love was that intangible feeling you have, the thing that you can't describe, right? I'm going to try and not be too wordy and grandiose with this, but that thing you can't put a finger on, that bond, that connection, that vibe, and it is that to an extent, but I thought you could almost put your lifestyle, your values, your goals, your ambitions to one side if you find the right person. There was this like silver bullet, right? And
you'd buy the ice cream if it was the right person.
Right. So, or the ice cream thing wouldn't be a problem at all because you're just so into each other. But it's actually a lot of different things, and values. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever actually properly thought about your values as a human being and done proper like NLP level stuff where you're really
drills, pints.
Yeah, exactly. Fine, and that's fine as long as you can find someone that also like drills and pints. So, but yeah, that understanding of yourself is really important. And actually, you need alignment on all of that stuff, you know, because even when we talk about goals and ambitions, a really interesting thing about the storyline on the show was like there was this judgmental thing, you know, that storyline about me being judgmental of Maria's job because she worked as a sort of makeup artist part-time, and the judgment that I made was wrong, and I shouldn't have done that. But one of the things that did make me realize was, right, I have goals and ambitions in my life which involve an element of financial freedom. Like one of my dreams in the next couple of years is to renovate a camper van and travel around Europe for a year, right? And so I would love to do that with a partner. In order to do that with a partner, I need a partner who's also able to contribute financially to that stuff, right? Because sadly I don't earn enough to subsidize someone else doing it. And so that's when I think when you do think about, right, if we have a shared goal and a shared ambition, how are we going to get there together as a partnership? And what resources do we both need to contribute to make that goal happen? So, and it doesn't just need to be financial, but it does need to be at times. So
that was the next point for me is 50-50 on finances. That's one conversation.
Yeah.
I think there was a moment talking around the actual roles within a relationship too.
Right.
So keen to hear, like, do you believe there are gender roles, things that, you know, the man should be doing, the woman should be doing? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so this ties into the early question about modern masculinity, right? Like, this is incredibly complicated and nuanced, but if I try and break it down, the fact that equality is even being talked about now is a wholeheartedly positive thing. And when I'm talking about equality between genders, right? Like, in this industry in particular, women are doing amazing things, and a lot of the best leaders I've had in my career have been women, right? And of course we need to consider things like the gender pay gap. We need to consider things like childcare and how they have an impact on a woman's ability to progress up the career ladder. But think about equality in a general sense, amazing. But one of the byproducts of equality is that men, particularly men who have been raised in this traditional provider mindset, they don't know what their role is anymore, you know, because it's like, right, if I'm not the provider and my woman who might be earning more than me now, who's doing better in her career because she has these feminine traits like compassion and empathy and kindness, and she's able to harness those to make herself better at her job, guys are now confused. And I can't even remember your original question, but like I'm banging on here because my sense is that for men it's difficult right now because they don't know what their role is. And what I always say to guys is that forget about being a provider for a minute. If you are going to be a provider to yourself and understand what you need to give yourself to make yourself a better human being, whether it's in the workplace, whether that's romantically, whether that's with your friends and family, right? Because, I can't remember the point of your question. But
so it was more just kind of, do you see there being male and female jobs, and would you want that? I appreciate it is nuanced, and there is an element of career and working. You know, if you're not working, then obviously the balance is different. But let's rephrase this. What would be your perfect kind of household for the male, female, in quotations, if this is audio only, roles?
Yeah, so to answer your question on traditional gender roles, they can be whatever people want them to be. It needs to be more fluid. And if people want to have a traditional male-female dynamic where man goes off to work and woman stays at home and raises children, or just, you know, creates a wonderful environment for the couple, so be it. Like, that's not on me, but my personal point of view is that I would like a relationship whereby, talked about goals and ambitions, like when we don't have kids, where we're both going out and working, contributing towards building a life together equally. And when we do have kids, I don't know if this is idealistic or not, but I would love to cut my hours down at work so that I can play more of a role in my kids' lives. I had a dad that wasn't around, and I really do want to make sure that I'm playing a role in my kids' lives rather than seeing them for 15 minutes at the end of every day. And a lot of the women that I date and a lot of the women that exist within my environment get a lot of purpose and enjoyment and identity out of work. So, you know, that then, if I go part-time, it enables them potentially to still keep a toe into their working life as well. Because one of my best female friends, Phoebe, head of marketing at a fashion brand, has recently had kids, and she's really struggling because suddenly her identity has gone from this incredible, articulate, passionate, you know, assertive woman who plays this role in the workplace through to spending every day with a 9-month-old baby. And that must be really hard. So I don't know if that's idealistic or not, but I've certainly seen couples that make it work, and that would be my preference, I think. So
has there been any couples that have worked out from the show?
Yeah. There's two couples, Bobby and Jasmine and Ben and Nick, who are still very happily married and really, really thriving. So,
And when did the show finish?
we stopped filming it October last year, and it stopped going out September this year.
Okay, interesting.
So in terms of then the filming, we're going to go all the way back to that because we have successful navigated a lot of different points.
Oh my God, I don't know how you're going to... How long is this podcast going to be?
3 to 4 days usually. But so how long did the actual show take? So you go in, how long are you doing the pods? How long's the next stage?
So it's 2 months in the pods. They're filmed in Sweden. You then have this savage moment. We had 11 engagements, and they can only take 3 to the next bit. So then 6 couples fly back to London, being engaged, being like, what the hell just happened? But for the cast members that were picked to progress, back to London for a few days, then fly out to Greece for a week. That's where you meet your fiancé properly for the first time. Then Camden for 3-4 weeks to live and sort of see if you sort of get on well in that apartment setting.
What was that like, being in the apartment, like just day in, day out?
I loved it. It was brilliant because, I mean, me and Maria aren't exactly on great terms now. Like, we're not best mates, but she's an amazing human being, and it was just brilliant being able to spend all that time with her, you know. And we weren't working, so like you're just enjoying each other, enjoying like your £40 a day per DM budget, you know. And yeah, just it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it.
I think a lot of people position it as a social experiment, but do you think there's an element that it's just never going to be a true social experiment when you are in Greece, you're doing all these things? Like it's not real life, is it?
No, it's not. You don't come anywhere close to experiencing the challenges and tribulations of a real relationship on that show, and that's why it's such a leap of faith to say yes at the altar, you know. And obviously we have 2 couples that have made it work, and I mean Bobby and Jasmine in particular, like we're living in different parts of the country, and Bobby very quickly was like, in order to make this marriage work, I need to move down to London and move in with Jasmine and get a place together, and he was ready to make that commitment. So like just so happy for them that they've made it work. And
why do you think those 2 couples were successful in their relationships?
Maybe because they aligned on financial contribution in relationships. No, honestly, like I don't know what they do in the casting, but they put a lot of rigor into it, and my guess is that they put far more than you see as a viewer, and I think that they match people based off personality and values before we even know about it. And you could just pick those 2 out straight away, those 2 couples as being absolutely perfect for each other. So they want the show to be as successful as possible, and I think there's a lot that happens behind the scenes to make that the case.
Without naming any names, if this did happen, did you hear of anybody that once they first saw the partner face to face were unhappy physically at what they saw? You don't have to call anyone out, but
I think there were, on a show like that, it's impossible to not be authentic to yourself, to my detriment at times. So I think if you've seen the show, you would know that there is maybe one couple in particular where there was a misalignment.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
PR person's answer that one.
No, but interesting. You've actually given us something there.
Is there any other shows now that you've been on that one that you think about, I might have a go on that, and I'll be interested in going on it?
Hell to the no. Certainly not dating shows. I'm too fucking old. People are always like, you're going to go on Love Island. I'm like, you should see the state of my dad bod, honestly. Like, they'd have to get some seriously good lighting for that. But I would do I'd love to do something like SAS Heroes Wins or something like that. But I think it has to align a bit more with who I am and my values, I guess.
Interesting.
You mentioned your age. I did think it was interesting. You were the oldest contestant on this series. And looking at comparatively to Love Island, it seems like they're getting younger and younger.
Right.
I think all of the men were 30 plus.
Yeah.
Women were at least 27, but most were in the 30s.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something in the maturity? First part of the question, I guess, women, a lot of people say mature younger. Do you think that kind of put everyone on a level playing field where they're a little bit younger, the men are a little bit older?
Yeah.
Did it feel natural? Not like you were chatting to someone 12 years younger?
No, I think that was, our show got really quite positive feedback, and it was for that exact reason. There was an amazing op-ed in the New York Times just saying, like, this is how reality shows should be shot. Because, and you're right, it was mainly because of the age of everybody, but also like, I mean, we all had our flaws, but I think we were all very self-aware and able to communicate quite well in our relationships. And that's the difference, I think, between the UK one and the US one. Everyone was expecting it to be a bunch of like permatan chavs with turkey teeth, and because that's their view of what Love Island is. But I think we were very lucky and they did a good job in the casting.
Nice. Permatanned chavs with turkey teeth. I like that.
I'm not saying that's my view of Love Island. It's just FYI. So,
and how's life changed since coming out of the show?
It's been crazy. It's not what I expected at all. But don't ever go on a show like that expecting to be like, you're not going to be brand dealed up or anything like that. A few of the cast have sort of gone in that sort of traditional influencer direction a little bit, but for me it's been amazing because, like I said, the show was a growth opportunity for me, and the direction it's taken me in post-show, even with like the brand stuff that I've been doing, I've had to be very, very careful about what I say yes to, but it's just, it's taken me in a completely different direction, and one which, like I said, has given me so much more purpose. And so, I mean, I'm interested to see what happens next. Like the camper van idea is not just a dream; it's something which I really want to happen, and stuff like that. And suddenly, when you realise you have an audience, like you can start making content for that audience wherever, and that's really exciting. So, the thing that I need to, and we all need to be mindful of as cast members, is like balancing the day job with the social stuff, because you want to keep your toe into both, ideally, I think.
What brands have you worked with so far?
TBC at the moment. I've turned down far more than I've worked with.
What have you turned down?
I'll give you the... I can't do...
Is there Haagen-Dazs on the horizon? Like a buy one, get one free, something like that?
So the verticals that... Ice cream, makeup and money splitting apps are my obvious, and I've had a few of those reach out. But the challenge I have is, because I've gone down this route with like content and stuff, I need to be really protective of my own brand, I guess, and it's as much about what I say no to as what I say yes to. So like my sweet spot in terms of the brands that I want to work with and that I'm talking to at the moment is like mental health, mindfulness, dating apps, that kind of area. And like I say, I mean, I don't have the audience for sort of fashion anyway, so like, if fucking Giacomo try and sign me up. About
what will be a dream brand for you to work with?
Great question. Probably like Calm or Headspace or one of those. I mean, it's the amazing thing about that sector is like BetterHelp everywhere. Like they've completely flipped their whole marketing strategy to focus on creators, and particularly long form creators. So, and they're obviously seeing a lot of benefit from it. But
keen to talk about that. So BetterHelp, they've had a lot of backlash, around the authenticity of the therapists. Yeah. Where do you stand on like the kind of influencers promoting products? Because it's easy to take the money. It's grown, that product has grown enormously.
Yeah.
But are they just, selling an imperfect product for money?
So hard, because it's not the responsibility of the creator or the influencer to dictate the morals or the ethics of the company they're working for. So like my point of view on BetterHelp, as a specific example, would be, right, you have to look at the general ethos of the company, which is about connecting people with mental health services, which is net positive, right? But the problem is, once all that stuff had happened, like as a brand guardian, I would be like, right, now's your time to pull away from that deal, because the ethics of the company, their responsibility to their end customer has now been questioned. But, imagine if every influencer put each brand that they work through the amount of rigor that you do as a comms person. Like, it would be impossible for them. And they'd end up, every single fast fashion brand would go out of business because, like Boo have got factories in China, and so it is difficult because creators ultimately have bills to pay. But
I think, though, you said that, it's not their responsibility necessarily to check it. I'm not sure if I agree. I think, I've worked with talent who, let's say they're in fashion, they will make their ethos to work with sustainable, ethical practices. And again, I've worked with a lot of talent in something like games. So in-game transactions, things like that. Kids are spending thousands and thousands. They'll be doing things actively to prevent kids and gambling, GamStop, things like that. I think there is a role that influencers should play, and I think they do have a responsibility to do so.
I agree with you. I think, but it's just how much rigor do they need to put into that? But you do need to consider it, and this is the one thing about reality TV, like you see it time and time again with the people that come out of these shows, and then they just say yes to everything straight away. And like, you have two choices, I think, with this stuff. You either take the 15 minutes of fame and you go hard and you go home, right? And your career dies after 3 months because you've just said yes to everything. Or you try and build a bit of a longer tail strategy around it. And so it depends what your priorities are.
And how have you priced yourself in terms of fees?
Just like free. Give me some ice cream and I'll do anything.
As long as he doesn't have to pay for it.
Have you spoken to like other people to go, oh, okay, that's how much I should be charging, or is it just finger in the air sort of stuff?
Yeah. So like we spoke about the Wild West of talent managers, of which you guys aren't, just FYI. But so you can get a good gauge from talent managers, because most talent managers, like smaller talent managers, will work on your behalf and do your brand outreach for you for 20% commission. And they will give you a good gauge on fees, and it's normally pretty transparent because it's their responsibility to make as much money for you as possible, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I'm also quite lucky that I work in that world. So, you know, I've worked with big brands like McDonald's and Carlsberg and Sky Sports and that sort of stuff. And so you sort of get a good gauge. But it is interesting because you can price for influencer deals depending on a bunch of different things. You can price based off like a cost per impression, you know, and I do see quite a lot of media agencies doing that stuff. But what that doesn't do is consider like the sort of reputational benefit of working with the influencer, you know, the usage and other channels, all that kind of stuff as well. So I think it's kind of, I don't know, a little bit lazy to look at influencers purely as a paid media channel, because sometimes the benefits can be far broader than that. Sometimes they can be, there's a drawback or a danger to working with them as well, you know? So I think it's case by case basis. But
it's an interesting one. I think the good thing about working and dealing with a talent manager when you're doing a deal is, I know this from experience, when someone comes to me with an opportunity, when it's one of the talent I work with, I know who's a great fit, who manages, like answers to the audience type, but also the creator type. So let's say it is a therapy app, you know, someone who actively speaks around mental health, things like that. But I sometimes find when talent are being spoken about outside of talent management, they're a name and a number, an engagement rate and a view list.
Agree.
And I think that's why it is so important to put that extra thought and time into it.
Yeah, but that's
and you get the right people.
So, but I mean, you're talking about that from a talent manager point of view, right? So, and I think that's because, to the earlier point around Wild West, like you're someone who thinks about things in the longer tail, and you know, rather than just thinking, right, if I put my talent on this brand's list, then I'm going to get a 20k payout. I don't care about potential reputational issues further down the line. So, and that's the difference. I think a good talent manager is someone who thinks far more holistically than just what are the commercials, and thinks about.
Need to find one of those, don't we, Curtis?
Yeah, I've got a few recommendations. But that's the thing. It's thinking more holistically about that talent's longer term career, isn't it? So
James said to me before the show today that he wants to introduce more banter and try and be
be
more cutting. I think that was the.
What's the juiciest DM you've had?
Oh, great one. No, I'm not going to answer that one.
That's been a good one then.
Yeah, good. It's fun.
Anything else, Curtis?
Would you do anything differently this time round? In life and in the show?
Show-wise, no. I mean, you know, I was as authentic to myself as I can be, and whilst I learned a lot about myself, like it's the people that get in the biggest trouble with those shows are normally the people that aren't authentic to themselves, because you will get found out. When you're shooting for 2 months, you can't be someone that you're not, right? So, and whilst it held a mirror up to my bad behaviour, I was also really proud of a lot of moments on that. So, life-wise, yeah, I would have, you know, trained at NASA and been a handsome billionaire astronaut by this point, but hey, did all right.
Are you just doing Instagram, or are you on TikTok and YouTube as well?
Got TikTok, which is wild again. Like to your point around content quality from earlier, like, you know, I put a lot of my polished mental health focused, perspective focused, insight focused stuff on there. It dies for obvious reasons. And when I do silly videos with my neighbours, 17-year-old kids, they get like millions of views. So it's just, you know, this is the thing about TikTok. Like from a brand point of view, I don't think brands have quite cracked working with creators on it yet because, you know, brands are still so worried about handing over creative control to the creators. And I think on Instagram, slightly more polished content still works okay. But on TikTok, like, you know, the brands that are doing it right are the brands that are just like, right, here's our a very, very rough idea of what we stand for as a brand. Now go away and make your own content.
Go as crazy and off brief really as you possibly can.
Exactly.
Do you get obsessed with the numbers, like your followers and likes and engagement?
Yeah, you do. And this is the thing, like, I mean, I had a bit of time off post-show and I'm back to the world of work as of tomorrow, but you do. It's. I mean, the platforms are built to give you those dopamine hits, aren't they? And it's mad how obsessive you get with that, like, you know, but I'm looking forward to taking a bit of a step back from it because I also find it's more rewarding. It's inevitable that you're always going to check your numbers, but it's nice to put out a bit of content, forget about it for a couple of hours and then check back. Because every time I put out a reel now, I'm looking at the first 5 minutes because you can get a sense within 5 minutes as to whether something's going to... Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting.
Have you got any like follower goals or growth goals on social media over the next few months, year?
You know how... Right, as a consultant, particularly when you're working on behalf of a brand on social, the party line is followers don't count, it's all about engagement. And that's the thing which I always try and bring back to myself, is like my audience isn't as big as some of the other cast members, but my engagement is absolutely brilliant. And it's because I've stayed true to myself and taken an audience-orientated approach to content. So, you know, hopefully brands understand that. But yeah, I would be much more. I'd much rather prioritize having a super engaged audience than one in the millions. You know. So.
With your plans to hopefully one day get a camper van and take that out, would you create content on that? Would you do it on your current channel, or would you do a new one? Because could you lose the engagement in doing it on the same channel?
Luckily, I think the kind of content that I'm putting out at the moment, you know, when I'm talking about whether it's male behaviour or mindset, lends itself quite naturally to just shooting that content in different locations. But so probably use the same channel for it.
You could do a roundup every day of, you know, if you do it with a partner, who's done what, who's spent what.
Exactly. Oh, right, yeah, no, I see what you mean.
Could be quite interesting.
Yeah. So
it'd be a good one. I like that idea.
No, thank you for that. Still that one.
Do it. 10%, please.
Yeah. I pay 20.
20. Final question.
Far away.
So this is something we're going to try and ask everybody that comes on the show. What would be your one piece of life advice to give to the next person who comes on the show, regardless of who they are and what they do?
Poor Tom doesn't get any.
No, I don't. Do you guys want to give me a bit of life advice first, and then I'll use that?
Drills. That's all I've got.
It's a bit of a cliche one, but it's one that I stand by, and is just fucking do it. Like, people get so obsessed. Even if you are an incredibly successful person, like you might have perfectionist tendencies, your view, particularly for social, is that, right, I want to get everything perfect, and that stops a lot of people. People present these barriers to themselves when actually you just got to fucking do it. Like, that was my thing when it came to doing stuff to camera. I found it so cringeworthy, and then... Like, when I put stuff out, that never, ever is anyone like, are you making these videos in, like, your bedroom? Do you know what I mean? They just want to see the content. So if you have a message and something to say, just do it.
Love that. Brilliant.
Is that Nike's phrase?
Just do it, yeah. No, I've just trademarked it. So.
Love it. That's awesome.
Excellent.
Well, that was a great first episode.
Yeah,
Good.
Nice one. Cheers for coming on, Tom.
Was it? You're welcome.
If
Lovely
you aren't already familiar with Tom, all his links will be down below. Go check him out. But it's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers.
Awesome.